If you looked at, say, your grandfather's time, you said it's quite antiquated, its training. Is it the introduction of strength training and Pilates that have been the big levers, as it were, in bringing the game forward, or do you think there's something else?
Well, I counter that because I think probably halfway through my career, when got into the England fold and environment, yes, the training became more inverted commas professional, but what does that actually mean? I think if you break each sport down, and particularly look at cricket, it it's a high skill game. It's a game of skill. So for me, the skill comes first. Without the skill, you can run around the field all you want, push as many bench presses and squats as you want, and yes, the body might look great in the mirror, and look great in a nice white skin tight shirt. And when you walk on the field, everyone says, look at this nice fit cricket team." But if you can't bat and bowl, I think you've got no chance. So cricket will always remain a skill game, and that's why there has been different sizes and shapes in the game of cricket over the many years, and that hasn't meant that some of those different shapes and sizes haven't been able to be incredibly successful, which they have. So I would query or counter this professional movement, not because it isn't great that we are advancing and that we are finding new methods to get better, fitter, stronger. But I still think if you look back at fast bowling in particular, where people would look at the need for fitness in that aspect, because it's probably the hardest skill, and running in all day in a hot sun, over after over, pounding in at the crease, that's where you really do your mileage. But some of the great bowlers over periods of time say, when I talk to them about fitness now, they say it's all rubbish. They do lots of mileage and running, and they bowl for hours in a net. And what's changed is a lot of young bowlers now are being sort of wrapped in cotton wool. Um, and in the short term, yes, they might be managing workloads, but fundamentally, there's no soft way through it. And, stress fractures of the back, if you speak to any young fast bowler, I don't think there'll be one that hasn't had a back related injury, whether it be a full on stress fracture or not. So, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you may as well get the stress fracture as soon as possible and get it over and done with, because you're bound to get one. And I think it's getting stronger, and it's learning your action and making that more repetitive. And I think once you do that, I think your body then learns how to get strong in the position that you need, rather than maybe the template of what is strength, and doing sort of movements that actually aren't related to bowling. And sure, they've adapted gym movements to build your core, and I think all those things are great, and I think are part of it, and perhaps have been the biggest addition. But you look back at some of the great bowlers of this of our, not say modern time, of yesteryear. I mean, they did the hard yards. They ran in for hours at practice. They got lots of mileage in, and they seem to do pretty well. So I think it is a controversial point, should we say?
If I took you back to any one of your campaigns with England and zoomed you in on what your typical week of training would be, what would it look like?
It would be a mixture of prehab and rehab. So I think a lot of players have always got niggles. I think I can't remember a time I walked onto a field without an injury of sorts, or a niggle, or something I was working on. So therefore, there would be probably a prehab stroke rehab element, just making sure that you were topping up the areas of weakness. So loads of TheraBand work. Pilates obviously comes into that, and I think once you've done a bit of that groundwork and fired up those muscles, I think then it would be perhaps more into trying to get your gym sessions in, whether that be with the trainer on your own, whether that be in a group session. Um, and that would be obviously hitting your strength points, trying to stay strong, particularly in the glutes areas and legs. I think very important. I think upper body in cricket. Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of power has come into the game now. It's a power game, but I still believe that it's a game about timing, and that for me, yes, it helps to be strong, but how strong do you need to be? Some of the smaller guys in the game hit the ball an absolute mile. Is that strength, or is that timing and talent, and the ability to hit the ball at the right time and get your sequencing right? You look at baseball hitting and stuff. A lot of it's about hip rotation and creating torque in in your lower body. So there's a lot of that comes into, which I don't think is totally isolated strength. And also, I think when it comes to bowling and batting and throwing, for that matter, obviously, I think your shoulder strength is important. So rotator cuff movements, getting your posture in a good place. But I also feel it's about feel. It's about touch. Cricket's, again, coming back to that word skill. And I think sometimes when you're doing heavy weights and isolated movements, you become a bit rigid and a bit one-dimensional, and you lose that soft touch and that ability to hold the bat loosely and time the ball, maneuver it through gaps, because that is a big part of the game. So, I would say that you try and touch a lot of those points, but then I think your real focus is to try and get yourself into a good place so that the hours can spend performing the skill. And I think for me, it was always about, what do I need to do to put myself out of my comfort zone to overload the skill? Because fundamentally, that's what I need. Those are the incremental changes and differences I need to make.